Second. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are adopted. A short number of items today. Sure how short the. Number one, Malden and Jenkins FY '22 audit recap, Miller Edwards. Ms. Standridge, would you intro the topic, please?
I absolutely will. Thank you. Good afternoon, council. Every year we have our annual external audit, and this year our external auditors were Malden and Jenkins. The lead partner on the job is Miller Edwards. He's coming up behind me, and he will be doing the presentation to actually present the financial information to the council. And if you have any questions, obviously you can ask them, but of course, Ms. Sheaf and I are here to answer any questions that you might have as well with that.
All right.
Miller, it's all yours.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having us over here today. It's a pleasure to do business with y'all and perform your annual audit. Again, I'm Miller Edwards. I've got Kirk Erich with me. He's one of our lead staff. I've also got David Irwin with me. He's one of our partners as well. Kirk's been with us about 11 years. I've been 37 years. David's been, what, 19 or 20? 20. All we do is serve governments. So this is kind of what we do for like tax season that's ending right now for every other CPA. Guess what? We don't care. We don't do any of that. But again, we do appreciate it. I'm going to let David take the lead and kind of walk you through this PowerPoint presentation. And do we have that pulled up, or is that?
Yep, it should be right after here.
Okay. David, then we'll let you have it right there. All right. Well, again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all are doing well. Again, my name is David Irwin, and I'm with Malden Jenkins. I was the quality control partner that oversaw this year's audits of the city's financial statements. And as Miller said, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all to discuss this year's result of the audit. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but the purpose of this afternoon's presentation is to provide you all an overview of our independent auditor's report, talk about the two compliance reports that we issue in conjunction with the audit, briefly hit the financial statement highlights, discuss some information that the auditing standards require that we communicate to you all, and obviously to answer any questions that you all may have. Now, the financial statements themselves, they are the responsibility of city's management and members of the council. As your independent auditors, our responsibility is to issue an opinion on these statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with government auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. Again, this is what you want. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as your external auditor. What this means is that, in our opinion, the financial statements are considered to be fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, as part of the audit, there are two compliance reports that we also issue, the first of which is called a single audit. Again, a single audit is a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 of federal expenditures. You all had around $22.8 million of federal expenditures this year, which resulted in us having to perform an audit, a single audit on three major programs, which was the COVID relief funds, the airport improvement program, and the clean water state revolving funds. As was the case with the single audit, as was the case with the financial audit, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit as well. The second compliance report is something called the Yellow Book Report, which is a report on the city's internal controls and your compliance with various laws and regulations. And I'm pleased to say that we do not have any audit findings to report to you all this year, meaning we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the city's internal control during our audit. And being one of the larger cities in Alabama, you all obviously have a significant amount of financial activity for which you have to report on. In addition, with all the new accounting standards that are being implemented each year, and really just how complex the financial reporting process has become, it makes it all the more impressive to be able to present to you all an audit that resulted in a clean opinion with no audit findings. And again, that's certainly something that you all should be proud of. And it really speaks to me, it speaks volumes about the hard work done by your staff. Carly, Becky, Savannah, and the entire finance department, they did a great job this year. They were very accommodating to our audit team, and they worked hard to address all of our questions and get us everything that we needed in order to get the audit finalized on time. And one thing I can certainly appreciate about your staff is they are proactive, not reactive. If something comes up throughout the year that they have a question on, they go ahead and call us and reach out. They don't let it snowball and wait until the audit starts to address any questions. And that constant proactive communication throughout the year really helps translate into a smooth, efficient audit that we saw this year. So again, want to thank your staff for their hard work this year. All right, now for a brief overview of your financial statements, you all prepare what is called an annual comprehensive financial report, otherwise known as an ACFR. Now, an ACFR requires the inclusion of additional information that goes above and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements. This document is submitted annually to the Government Finance Officer Association, otherwise known as the GFOA, where they put it through a pretty stringent review process. They have not only their special review committee, but also their professional staff look at your document. And when they look at your document, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the city. What they want to do is make sure that the necessary information is in your document so the users of your financial statements can do so themselves. And through this review, the GFOA has once again awarded the city the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for FY21, and that certificate is included in this year's report. So looking at your awards earlier, I believe this is the 35th year in a row that you all have received this certificate. So again, just another example of you all going above and beyond the basic reporting requirements. Again, your financial statements, it's an impressive document and one that you all should certainly be proud of.
So David, this is for FY21?
Yes, FY22.
Huh?
It's for September 30, 2022.
Is the date of the audit, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's for the preceding 12 months or for 21?
It's for October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022.
Which
The
is
certificate of
FY22 year, right?
The certificate of excellence that David's talking about was for 2021 because you take your financial statement audit and then you give it to the GFOA to determine their review. We just got our review back for 2021 and that's the certificate of excellence that he's talking about. The one that he's reporting on right now is for fiscal year 22. We'll send that one off to GFOA for them to review as well, and then we'll get that feedback from them.
Okay, so the typical time frame is we finish the year September 30th. I'm sure Ms. Standridge's people are culling together all the information and trying to find sometime around the beginning of the year, maybe y'all take it, and then sometime around mid-spring, we get an audit.
Correct. Okay. And then that document is submitted to GFOA. It's anywhere between a 6 to 8 to 10 month turnaround before they issue the.
This is the ACFR that he's talking about. It's about 180 pages of great information.
That's
You need to go to sleep, take a read.
That's right. That's right. As you look through the report, one section I always like to point out is the management discussion analysis, otherwise known as the MD&A. If you have the financial statements, it begins on page 6. It's right after our report, our opinion, and I would strongly encourage everyone to read that section. The purpose of the MD&A is to make it easier for a broader audience to use and better understand your financial statements. And it does this by providing a financial narrative from the perspective of management. So, if you have any questions about any fluctuations in activity that occurred throughout the year, if there was anything unique or unusual that occurred that you have questions about, oftentimes you can find the answer within the MD&A. So, again, this section, it does a really good job of summarizing financial statements. Like Miller said, if you're not keen on reading all 200-something pages of the financial statements, the MD&A is a good section to read to give you a basic summary of that report. So again, if you can, I would encourage everyone to take the time to read through the MD&A. The city's basic financial statements are broken up into 3 components, the first of which being the government-wide financial statements. Now, the government-wide financial statements, they provide a broad view of the city's operations in a manner similar to that which you would see with private sector business. All of the funds of the city are combined into 1 to 2 columns, governmental activities or business type activities, depending on the nature of the fund. And in that section, there are also two columns for your 2 discretely presented component units. We have a slide here that summarizes the entity-wide financial statements from a government-wide perspective. And as you can see here, county end of the year with assets of a little over $1 billion. Of that amount, about $720 million are capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation, which again, that's your land, the buildings, the machinery, equipment, et cetera, that the city owns. You also had around $615 million in liabilities, which resulted in a net position of approximately $440 million for the year. Looking at revenues, they were at $268 million compared to expenses of $226 million, which resulted in an increase in net position of right at $42 million for the year. So all in all, a good year for the city from an entity-wide perspective. Again, as you all were able to increase your net position by about 11%. I will say this is really the only time you'll see the city's financial activities reported in this manner. In the day-to-day operations of the city, the focus is more so on the individual funds themselves. Which brings me to the second component of your financial statements, which again are your fund level statements. Like I said, this is what you all typically see throughout the year. The fund level statements, they focus on individual parts of the government and report the city's operations in more detail than that of the entity-wide statements. And with all the city's funds, if I'm in your shoes, my primary focus is on the general fund. It's the main operating fund of the city, and therefore it accounts for the majority of your revenues received and funds expended. Have a couple of slides here, a couple of charts on these next few slides that will break down the revenues and expenses for the general fund. As you can see on this slide, total revenues were just over $193 million. That's right in line with prior year. As you can see on this pie chart, obviously the vast majority of your revenues are derived from taxes, which total around $125 million. That represented about 65% of your total revenues for the general fund. A couple other significant sources worth mentioning. You all have licenses and permits of $26 million and intergovernmental revenue of approximately $27 million for the
So
year.
David, does that I think you just answered it right there, that 27 million we saw on the front page, that's what accounts for the difference, that counts as revenue in this, and that's what accounts for the difference in the revenue number we see in an audit versus the projected revenue numbers in our budget.
Mayor's making a point to make sure that the chiefs are aware of the public safety percentage that's on this
I was just
expenditure pie
reminding
chart.
you.
I would say it could be more up and down, it's still kind of tilted a little bit. We'll take what we get.
I'm wondering why you're gonna say 75 million.
I assumed TPD was gonna be providing helicopter training and
We had a couple
helicopter
helicopters,
rentals
yes.
out to the airport. Yeah. Go ahead, Dennis.
Okay.
So that 22.7 shows up in that 193, was it?
Go back.
I was trying to go back here.
Nope, too far.
Both of them are doing the same. I think the general fund revenue.
The revenue
pie
pie
chart.
chart. That one?
Okay. I'm sorry, it's about your question.
Can
The
you
20
back up one more? You said total revenues were 193, didn't you?
Okay, the general fund?
So that's showing 245 million in revenue for the general fund, right?
That's revenue and other sources of revenue.
What are
Transfers in, proceeds from issuance of debt, transfers in from other funds.
What about that 22.7 million in federal fund?
That's in your intergovernmental revenue, so that is included in that amount.
Okay.
Okay, pie chart for the general fund expenditures. Operating expenditures, they total around $159 million, which again, just like your revenues, that was right in line with prior year. As you're looking at the different functions here, as you would expect, public safety and infrastructure and public services represent the majority of these expenditures. Public safety was around $67 million, and that accounted for approximately 42% of the general fund's expenditures. And your infrastructure and public services were right around $36 billion for the year. So after factoring in the other financing sources and uses that I mentioned just now, such as the proceeds from debt issuances and transfers to and from other funds, the general fund's fund balance increased by approximately $20 million to $56.7 million for the year. And we have a slide here that shows the net change in fund balance over the past 4 to 5 years. And these slides to me are always interesting to kind of reflect back on where you were and compare it to where things currently stand. And I think this chart says a lot. You all have done a good job, a great job of continuing to increase your fund balance, especially considering everything that's gone on over the past 3 years and the economic uncertainty that has followed it. It's impressive to see that you all have consistently been able to stay within budget and increase your fund balance. And in this 5-year period, doing the quick math, I think the fund balance increased $38 million within this period. So that's something I believe everybody in this room should be proud of. And congratulations to you all on that. When I talk about fund balance, this is one thing I always like to remind people. Fund balance is not what you all have in the form of cash, just as you see fit. Fund balance is merely the difference between assets and liabilities, only a portion of which is cash for discretionary spending. Another thing to think about when you talk about your fund balance, the general fund incurs expenditures on average about $14.2 million per month. So you all ended the year with an unassigned fund balance equal to approximately 2.5 months of your operating expenditures. And again, with you all having a September 30th year end, which is just before your property tax revenue starts coming in, having an unassigned fund balance equal to about 2.5 months of your operating expenditures is good. Y'all are in a strong position as of September 30th. So again, common theme here. That's something else you all should certainly be proud of. One other fund I do want to briefly mention is the Water and Sewer Fund. It's the only major enterprise fund that you have. Again, enterprise funds are used to account for operations in a manner similar to that of a private sector business. The goal of these enterprise funds are to be self-sufficient and to generate enough operating revenues to cover their operating expenses. And as you can see on the summary on this slide, the Water and Sewer Fund continues to do just that. It ended the year with operating revenue of $19.3 million. Its net position increased by $14 million to around $269 million for the year, and it generated positive operating cash flows of a little over $26 million. So again, that fund continues to be in really good shape financially. One final item to discuss, again, is just certain information that the auditing standards require that we communicate to you all. Again, with you all receiving a clean opinion and no audit findings, the information here is essentially a formality, but we received full cooperation from city management and staff. There were no disagreements with management on any accounting issues that would have affected the financial statements. There were no significant issues that we discussed, again, that would have affected the financial statements. There were no uncorrected misstatements. And again, we are independent of the city as required by governmental auditing standards. And with that, unless anybody has any questions, that concludes my presentation. But again, what I've tried to do is just hit the highlights, what I think is the most important to you all. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address those. But again, I want to thank your staff one more time for their hard work this year. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all, and look forward to working in the future.
Thank you for coming in. Where are y'all out of, Dave? Ella?
We're from out of Georgia.
From where?
Georgia.
Which part?
We're from Macon.
Macon and Atlanta.
Okay.
But we serve clients all over the southeast, from Corpus Christi all the way up to Virginia. We're all over the place. Seems like every day.
Well, again, thank y'all for coming in.
Well, absolutely.
One question, and Norman, you're gonna have to help me because you got the accounting background, because the question may be incredibly stupid. So, Ms. Standard, the product that we deal with the most with every year is the budget. That's what we're immersed in.
Yes, sir.
And that says, here's what we think's gonna happen during the next 12 months. The audit, which comes in, sounds like maybe 15 months, some months after, right? Says, this is what you actually did, right? What is the reconciliation piece or process that compares and ties together those two?
Absolutely. So, hey, Miller, can I have that back real quick?
See, it's on the page I think you want.
Yes, actually, right there. So that we do have a statement within the ACFR that shows our original budget, our final budget, which is all the revisions that take place throughout the year factored in, and then our actual amount based on the financial statements and the audit that has been performed. And then you'll see a variance over here in the side column. So we actually do present that financial information that will show original budget as adopted in September of the previous fiscal year, the final adopted budget as of the end of the fiscal year, and then the actual amounts that we've shown, along with any variations along each line item. So we do have that reconciliation within the reporting as well.
Okay, and since I've been having trouble sleeping lately, I would like a.
Absolutely. We can have a copy for every council member, and we'll have it in your inbox.
I'm not inflicting it on them, but.
And also, and just for anybody else that's in the room or that's listening possibly online, these statements are also posted on our city's website. If you will go to annual financial reports in the search bar, we've already posted it online for anybody's viewing pleasure.
Thank you. Again, gentlemen, thanks for coming in. It's nice to.
Chairman, can I
Yeah,
just make
sure.
a comment? I think that whenever you go through an audit, and you guys do a great job, I think it's always very comforting to hear as a city official that our team, which we know does a good job, is actually praised and verified as doing a good job. And I think that is very important for the city of Tuscaloosa residents to know that we have a very good accounting department, and the stuff that we do down here, you know, we all take this real seriously, and you couldn't get a higher grade than that, so I praise Carly and her team, because it's real important to know that, to have that comfort, I think, level for the council and for the mayor, for all of us to know that what we're looking at is good information.
Thank you, Mr. Crowe. That's extremely kind of you. And I would like to, just because this is like the praise point, Savannah Hornsby is our Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting, and she is here, and she is the one that is she's the audit manager from our side of the game. So really it's about her and her team, managing the entire process and getting all the information to Malden and Jenkins. Really could not praise her enough and her team for everything they've done in the last, 6 months.
And that is not an easy job. I know I hated all of them. So I praise y'all too, that y'all can do that, because accounting is difficult, but you better have good accountants, because you need to know where you stand at all times. I think that's just important, and I appreciate what y'all do for us.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I believe you're up on capital project budget.
Just for you, I'm gonna give you this.
Oh, thank you.
For your sleeping.
Thank you all.
It's your sleeping pill for this week.
Brandy is passing out to you some handouts. We likely won't be referencing them unless you ask a specific question. These handouts can also be found online, as Ms. Sandridge mentioned with the CAFR. These handouts, though, will serve as outstanding tools for you in the weeks and months ahead as you begin to debate and delve into the budget recommendation that we'll be providing for you today. And so please, if you have any questions today or in the future, let us know. We're also passing out a copy of the presentation that we'll be showing you that's going to go over the highlights. Please note the highlights are not every single aspect of the budget. There are dozens of recommendations embedded into this, tens of millions of dollars, well over $100 million of recommendations that we're presenting today. This is a process that began months ago, and it culminates into this recommendation. And I certainly, again, want to echo the comments of all of you to our A&F staff. The audit certainly validates the professionalism and dedication we have. But today's recommendation is a direct result of their work, OCE, Construction Facilities and Grounds, Water and Sewer, StratComs, and our Operations Department. So they've all made it possible. And I'm ready to jump into some of the highlights of the project. You will see that we're approaching this really with three overarching funds. General Fund, Elevate, which is technically a general fund line item, but we separate out, and Water and Sewer. So the first fund that we talk about that's embedded in our general fund is the opioid fund. This is a new fund for the city of Tuscaloosa. You've been briefed on this in the past. It's a result of the nationwide opioid lawsuits. The city has received $600,000 in a settlement with Johnson & Johnson and 1.2 with McKesson. Those numbers come in
So,
increments.
Excuse me, Mayor, we've received those top numbers?
We haven't received them.
Huh?
Some are coming in different installments. So today, and I'll let Ms. Standridge answer those questions.
So we've been awarded by the court
Awarded.
those amounts. The amounts that we've received, and some of them are on payment plans, and so the amounts that we've received are in that lower section on the slide.
We've received $958 from Janssen & Johnson, and we've received our first installment from McKesson. And so we anticipate in future years more installments to come. The opioid funding has specific uses. You can't go out and pave a road with it or do a storm drainage project. It has to meet a specific purpose within the litigation. And so what we've done as a team is try to pinpoint what is an appropriation that meets the standard and also can move the needle. So today we would like to propose the Freedom Farm investment as the first of our investments with the opioid lawsuit funding. What makes Freedom Farm, beyond the fact that it provides a place for foster families and children, is the fact that it's a perfect P3 partnership. It's not just the city alone. Dr. John Waits, that many of you know, has really founded this. Weldon Cole, who chairs the board, has been part of this. There's a heavy investment from the public sector or the public funding. The Houston Family Foundation has also made a significant investment. The county has committed money, and the city would be committing funding. Again, this would build foster homes at the site in Coker, Alabama, with the focus being on children who have gone through unimaginable circumstances in their life that can be connected to drug overdose and drug addiction impacting where they are. This Freedom Farm is something I know that Weldon Cole has reached out to several of you to meet with him. I would encourage you to do so. Time doesn't allow for me to adequately share their story of what they're doing and the difference that they can make, and the partners that they have from DHR on down. But this is a way to help some of our most vulnerable children in the city of Tuscaloosa get the foster family support they need. And the funding would have to go to City of Tuscaloosa children. So it would be designated strictly for the residents of the City of Tuscaloosa, children. City
When
of
it says
Tuscaloosa.
total received to date, there's been nothing dispersed. right?
No, it will require you, the council, to disperse it. We would recommend $375,000 in fiscal year '23 and then $375,000 in fiscal year '24. Again, I would encourage each of you to meet with Weldon and Will Houston, I think, who is chairing their fundraising efforts. I think you'll be very impressed with this project and understand the logic behind our recommendation.
So that would leave about 320 left.
In that particular,
opioid settlement?
no, it would, you're gonna, with the McKesson lawsuit, that'll be 1.2 over how many years? Is
I think it's over 10 years.
over 10 years, you'll have up to 1.2 million over 10 years, additional funding.
Y'all don't know it, the mayor's had multiple teeth yanked out of his jaw. Our heart's with you, brother.
Yeah.
Back up a slide, please, Carla,
He's got the clicker.
or whoever's
Yeah.
running. So we've received 700,000, right? Between 300 and 695.
We've
We've
received
received-
693,000.
Okay, we have it now. So if we go ahead one slide, if
if we do 375 in FY '23, that leaves 320-ish of what we've already received.
So the payout schedule for McKesson is really only going to be about $90,000 a year. And so if we wanted to earmark the 375 for fiscal '24, we would need to leave a certain amount in that fund. We really will probably hit just the 750 like alone within the first 2 years, unless the endo payout will be allowed and received between now and fiscal '24, which I don't necessarily see that happening with the timeline that is going on.
And let me also suggest, and it's like many of the highlights that you will see, if we wanted to, if this were something the council wanted to invest in, we could look at a 3-year funding, 5-year funding. In my discussions with Mr. Cole, and he knows that we were going to be coming to the council, I think it's the pledge of the city is what's the most important, because it helps them go out and get other pledges for this program. So now until the major general fund, as we heard earlier, the outstanding report, thanks to really thanks to your leadership and the management of our A&F. This year's general fund surplus is $26.47 million. This includes Elevate as a part of that fund. We have $17.6 million available to spend under our current policies at the city of Tuscaloosa. So that's the main heart of the general fund recommendations that you will see. We were also including, beyond just the general fund RFFI, we're including $1.5 million in gas tax and $114,000 from the American Rescue Plan. So the first major recommendation that we have with you is the most significant, is going to be $6 million for Fire Station 6. Mr. Fell, this is located in your district. It's at the corner of Hargrove Road and Loop Road. And by the way, my parents, your constituents, are very excited about this fire station being near their home off Kicker Road. This property has already been purchased by the city of Tuscaloosa from the United Methodist Church, and we will be ready to go to construction probably sometime this summer. Summer, you have anything to add on Fire Station 6?
No, we're nearing design completion and we'll start the bidding process soon and start construction.
Chief Smith, I know.
Just thank you. It's a station that's gonna serve this community well for the next 50 years plus.
So, as you and I discussed briefly this morning, it's certainly 1/3 of our recommendation is going directly in to Fire Station 6, and I'm open to discussing other ways that we talked about briefly this morning. Paving, we have a total of $4.5 million going into paving, with $2.9 million coming out of the GFRFFI, the surplus, and $1.5 million in gas tax appropriation. So, as Norman, you and I discussed, $4.5 million doesn't go as far as it used to. Only about 60% compared to 2 years ago as it used to. But certainly it would provide significant paving across Tuscaloosa. And that would be on top of the existing paving contracts that we have out there, plus major roads like Malisham, Jack Warner Parkway, and our partnership with AlDOT that will be on a paving cycle sometime later August or September of this year. Drainage, we have 2 major drainage projects that are embedded in the RFFI recommendation. $1 million for Padden Lake drainage in Mr. Fell's district. It's a good day for Mr. Fell in his district. $1.3 million in Mr. Tyner's district. Please note, neither one of these projects have gone to bid. This is based off the best estimates that we have from OCE. So again, nothing's final until bid day, but that is right now the recommended funding sources. I listed up there the ongoing projects we have that are either in engineering or construction for drainage projects across Tuscaloosa. It's a pretty extensive list, as you can see, from Woodland Forest to Academy Drive to 10th Avenue to other places across our city. And storm drainage is going to continue to be a focus of ours. At some point, many of these projects here that are engineered, we're going to have to sit down and discuss funding, because many of these projects are in the, they're going to be not in the millions, but tens of millions. of dollars when they come to fruition. And I know that's a discussion Mr. Crow and Mr. Busby and Mr. Lanier have had with me on a couple occasions, and we certainly understand that and want to work with you in making that happen. We have $700,000 recommended for fiber. Part of that is redundancy between TPD and 3200. We have a slide of the Tuscaloosa Police Cyber Intelligence Unit, but it's more than just that. It's for our operations across the city. I want to give Jason Foster, our new CIO, a lot of credit. He's come in as we've consolidated fiber under IT instead of having it bifurcated between a couple of different departments of the city. He actually requested more than this, but this is what we were able to fit into the budget. I think he wanted it, he'd take as much as you'd give him, but I think he'd like another additional $250,000. But we think this is a very good start and can get IT moving forward on its fiber, increasing our fiber connectivity and redundancy across the city. $1.75 million for facilities improvements. This comes out really of the work that Summer has been doing across our city. One of the things that we realized we've had a deficit in recent years is just taking care of our own facilities and making certain that we create the accountability and the methodologies that are necessary to ensure that not only do we take care of infrastructure external to us, but our own internal infrastructure, non-water and sewer. And so Summer's done a good job. Right now, when you have your work sessions, we'll certainly break this down into more detail, but $1.75 million for our general fund assets. This includes things such as elevator replacement. I know that Mr. Tyner, I'm looking at you.
I know.
You know, we were all kind of embarrassed you got stuck in an elevator at the city of Tuscaloosa. So we know that we need we need new elevators.
We're all in panic mode.
But an elevator is expensive. It's expensive. And so you see 1.75 million and you can get a little bit of sticker shock, but I think Summer could have doubled that number if possible in our budget. And certainly she can go through the breakdown of the facility improvements that we need across the city. Again, this splits Mr. Tyner and Mr. Fell's district, but the demolition of Veterans Memorial Pedestrian Bridge. We've done traffic, when I say pedestrian counts on that bridge, just a handful of people a month cross that bridge. It actually crosses Aldott Highway being 15th Street. Aldott has no interest in the bridge itself. So there's going to be no plans to restore that bridge. To restore that bridge is almost $2 million. So we think the best thing to do is to go ahead and demolish the bridge and move forward. $1.1 million for the Tuscaloosa Public Library facility repair. Mr. Winter, who's been representing the library, sent me a note. He's told me, and he may have shared it with you, I assume he has, that Northport and the county have committed to their proportional shares. So if that's the case, then we need to go ahead and commit our $1.1 million for roof repairs at the public library, and certainly it would be contingent upon that. That's certainly good news that both the county and Northport have pledged those amounts.
I got a text saying that the council, Northport Council did not. They passed it out of committee, but then they chose to not vote on it at a council meeting for at least several weeks, contingent on us.
Well, I think we'll all be able to. If they've made that commitment, then I feel certain. I think the county is going to meet on May 3rd to discuss it. I sense from my conversations, everyone's in agreement. So.
I think so. They did say they passed their committee, but they chose not to go before the council for 2 more weeks.
Okay. So that number is based off the estimates that have been provided by the Tuscaloosa Public Library. So any questions on general fund before we switch to Elevate? And again, I do apologize. It feels very difficult for me to talk. I don't know but if you misunderstand, if I say something you don't understand, please speak up. It will not hurt my feelings.
Great.
Elevate Tuscaloosa. So let's jump in. First, let's talk about the 22A bond contingency recommendation. We had 7.5 million in the contingency. We're recommending 4.3 of that contingency towards Snow Hen Park, 2 million towards the Benjamin Barnes Branch YMCA, and 1.2 million to the Tuscaloosa Tennis Center. With the Benjamin Barnes YMCA and Snow Hen Park, that's just a direct reflection of when we went to the bond market. The prices today are about 40% higher than they were at that time. But that's why the council set aside a contingency, because we knew the great inflation was beginning. Tuscaloosa Tennis Center, depending upon the size and scope, the 1.2 million will be a start, but I don't want you to leave here thinking that that may be the ultimate number. That may require, just depending upon the scope and the investment that we make at the tennis center, that number will likely need to be higher. But Snow Hen Park and Benjamin Barnes are hitting first. And so that's why you see us moving forward with the 4.3 and the 2 million for Benjamin Barnes and Snow Hen Park. Any questions on the 22A bond contingency recommendation? Okay, moving on to other Elevate recommendations. Ms. Howard, it's a good day in your district too. So not only with Benjamin Barnes Branch, but Carlton Park, we're recommending 1.5 million from Elevate. This will be paired with the 250,000 we already have budgeted for the American Rescue Plan.
What a change that'll be, right?
Yeah.
Goodness, it's a big deal. Oh, yeah.
So for Mr. Tyner and Mr. Busby, the University Boulevard Corridor Plan, as you know, we looked at, we were very fortunate in 2021 to get the raised grant, but unfortunately the timelines associated with the grant, and quite frankly, the amount of 17.1 million that would have to be spent in a very condensed time frame, especially with dozens of pieces of property that would have to be acquired under federal standards, made the project where it wouldn't have been realistic for us to be able to complete those deadlines. But fortunately, thanks to the work of our team, we've been able to secure $10 million from the NPO for the University Boulevard East in Alberta for Mr. Tyner's district. And we also will divide up the 9 million that's remaining, 4.5 on the districts 1 and 4 side, 4.5 on the Alberta side of the project. So in addition to those amounts, we're recommending 4 million in 24, 2.5 million in 25, 1 million in 26, and 2.5 million in 27. Take Mr. Tyner's project out in Alberta. What we anticipate on the University Boulevard downtown corridor side is projects that are, quote, shovel ready and moving. Instead of shutting down a half mile or a mile of that corridor, if we have a section, and I'm being theoretical here, but let's say from Reed Street to Stallings, that we do that particular project, which may be $1 million or $2 million project, we just approach the University Boulevard downtown corridor in more of an increment style as projects become ready. On the University Boulevard corridor, that's going to be one major project. The other reason why on the university side is because we can go ahead and put in safety, the things of lighting, cameras, etc., pedestrian improvements. We can put them in a more piecemeal manner because of the already existing improvements that exist from more than 10 to 15 years ago. We will certainly be ready to talk in more detail at the appropriate time on that. But we do think this is exciting for us because we, at least on the western side of University Boulevard, we untangle ourselves from all the federal guidelines, which will make those things move quick. We're recommending another $7 million for the Sabin Center. This is dealing with site development. When the event center was paused, the money for the site development side of the event center was moved out with it, or it was no longer there. We anticipate that that's going to be developed, whether it's our partnership with the state of Alabama or whether it's eventually an event center. So we think it's prudent to go ahead and do the site development on that side. We feel very good right now with the governor's recommendation for the Sabin Center, and this would be applied to that site. And certainly we would work with the state eventually on that reimbursement
Do
side.
we not show the state's commitment in the budget?
Well, not yet, not till it officially goes through the legislature, but in terms of capital funding stack that we look at today, and by the way, if the state's funding, if that were to change, then obviously we would need to come back and change what we're recommending today. We're going ahead and presenting it to the council with the hope that it passes the legislature. If it doesn't, then as we go through the budget hearings, then we will have to adjust. So if you assume that the governor's recommendation passes the Alabama legislature, this gives you a sense of the capital stack for the Savings Center itself. The city's commitment of $42 million in construction, $9.8 in professional services, $8.3 in property acquisition, matched with $14 million in commitments from community donors, which is outstanding. Another $1 million in professional service from a community donor, plus the state of Alabama's award. This is a true P3 partnership of the highest caliber, and so we're really proud of this. And the capital stack clearly doesn't show the operational commitment that's also been made by the state of Alabama.
And the $7 million you're talking about for site development, is it in that
It's in those.
construction, the 42?
It's in the construction number now. Again, if the state's portion of that is pulled out, then we will need to come back and adjust that recommendation on the site. But if the council decides not to pause on the event center but build an event center, you're gonna have to put that money back in for site development. Does that, and I hope I've explained.
I'm gonna think about it, but
Yeah.
again, for today's purposes, I think this is getting us dipped down into the project recommendation.
Okay. This is a new project, but we think the time has come as as the downtown University corridor continues to thrive. Greensboro Avenue also needs to join the renaissance in our central city. We would like to recommend to the council that we look for engineering from University Boulevard to 7th Street on Greensboro Avenue. There were plans, there were conceptualized plans, not engineering plans, that were done several years ago as an overall master plan. Those plans at the time actually have Greensboro Avenue going on a road diet from 7th back down to University Boulevard. One of our local famous restaurateurs, Charles Morgan, I know has talked to many of you about the idea of increasing the pedestrian widths, creating more of a pedestrian feel in that corridor. And when you look at Greensboro Avenue from University Boulevard back down to Jack Warner Parkway, that design actually fits into the design that you see here. We are a long way away from recommending a final design. If the engineering is approved, we would want to sit down with the local business owners. But we think it's time for the downtown renaissance to begin its way moving towards down south on Greensboro Avenue. Any questions on that? We're also recommending the expansion of the Northern Riverwalk. This may be one of the most popular parks. You know, when I don't know about you, but anytime you're out in public and someone stops you, you kind of get that sinking feeling. Since we've opened Northern Riverwalk, I've had more people stop me and talk about what an amazing park it is. It's clearly used. If we've made any mistake with Northern Riverwalk, it's we probably built the parking lot too small. It's getting that much use. The Northern Riverwalk is also going to be benefited by the McWrights Ferry Road project, which is going on today. As part of the McWrights Ferry Road project, it's going to have a pedestrian bridge and extend the Riverwalk back across North River. What we would like to do is go ahead and begin design to have that connection. So when McWrights Ferry Road construction is complete sometime in late '26, you should be able to go from Watermelon Road and McWrights Ferry Road all the way down to the entrance of Northern Riverwalk without ever getting onto the street. You'll either go on the sidewalk or the Riverwalk that will connect. So we think the timing of this couldn't be any better, and we want to move forward with that design. Any questions on Elevate? So the last fund that we want to go into is water and sewer, and I know I will need Kimberly's help on a few of these, maybe even in pronouncing what she is recommending to all of us. We had this year, as you saw in the audit, $14 million in surplus. We have, after you less out our commitment on the 10-year plan, future debt service in the 24 bond issue, and current encumbrances, that leaves us with $2.8 million available to spend in the upcoming fiscal year. In addition, we're recommending contingencies on the 2022B, which is $2.9 million, SRF of $5.1 million, and then we have a slate of recommendations for the 24 bond issue, because the planning for that will begin fairly soon, and we're wanting to get the council sign off so we can begin moving those projects ahead. So first, the Fletcher plant, or plant improvements at Fletcher. Out of the 22 bond, you see the list that we're recommending here. Kimberly, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there anything of note, instead of me reading it out, anything of note, or do you have any questions for Kimberly on that, whether it's the aeration diffuser? I'm not even going to try to pronounce these words. Any questions on about the Fletcher plant improvements, whether it's from the SRF, the 24 bond, or for the 22B bond? Okay.
Most of these are just major repairs. They're nothing like super new or exciting like bar screens were.
Yeah.
But most of these are just major repairs to existing processes that already exist.
And again, we will go through all this in detail at the various work sessions. The plant improvements at Plot, we're recommending $10 million in plant improvements at the Plot plant. This plant is getting higher and higher water demand in North Tuscaloosa. And Kimberly and I actually, she just proved me so wrong at a budget meeting on this when we were talking about how much water we were using and the capacity left at the plant. And she's absolutely right. This plant is getting used heavily because of the growth in North Tuscaloosa, and we're going to need to make the improvements so it continues to have the capacity to serve that area of the city. We are proposing out of the 24 bond, $2.5 million in raw water line assessment. Anything to note on this, Kimberly?
This will include just assessing and doing good investigations of the raw water lines from Lake Nickel and from Lake Tuscaloosa. And it will be as lines go to the Plot plant and to the EDLA water treatment plant.
And then probably the most significant project out of the 24 bond recommendation is the northwest sewer line expansion. We would recommend going ahead and beginning the engineering planning out of the 22 bond, and then budgeting in the 24 bond, $8 million for construction. This is to meet the growth that we're seeing in North Tuscaloosa, and then certainly we know that this is going to be needed to continue to grow our city. And so this project was first actually looked at in the mid-2000s. And then once we hit the Great Recession, everything slowed down. But as you've seen with housing starts in North Tuscaloosa, we're getting a lot of demand up there, and we've got to grow our system to meet the demand that's coming. We have $2 million out of the 22 bond for AMI, and then 24 we're recommending. And so if this were adopted by the council, how far would this get us with AMI overall across the city?
With the 2024, that would get us to 100%, the 2024 bond.
And so the next step is for you to begin your work. As I told Mr. Busby this morning as we were talking about today's recommendation, I think this council will need more than one work session. There is a lot. If you look through the details, there are dozens of recommendations in here. We've hit the high points, but there's a lot in there from general funds to elevate to water and sewer, and we want to work with you in helping you form your recommendation. We're really not under any major time constraints. There's no projects that we're having to say we've got to move this forward. And the next couple, the next couple weeks, couple months gives us time to answer all your questions. With that being said, you got our team members around the room here. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Chairman, I have a question. What's our completion rate on the AMIs now, the new water meters? What's the completion rate currently on the new water meters?
Like, how many do we have in service right now? Between, right around the 6,000 meters that we have in service right now, we're actively with staff slowly putting them in the ground. And then we'll have the first phase of this, which we'll bid this summer, which will get us an additional 15. So we feel like by the end of this project, the first phase of the project that will probably end in the spring of '24, the first phase will have about half of our system on AMI, and then the rest will be completed with the 2024 project. So by the end of 2025, the end of calendar year 2025, we anticipate being 100%.
And that'll be 55 to 60,000 meters.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Mayor, thank you. It's a first encounter. It's a lot to look forward. Appreciate the work that has obviously gone into it. Mr. Tyner, Randy, we'll take a look at what kind of work sessions best fit our calendar, and then of course everybody's welcome. But it will be certainly mandatory for Finance Committee. Any other questions or comments? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
We always have to have a new spreadsheet, Mr. President.
Is there a motion to adjourn, man?
So moved.
Spreadsheets, we got 8 pounds of bud.
Carly,
All in
we haven't
favor,
seen
say
your
aye.
Elevate spreadsheet later.
Aye.